Hello, welcome to The Crap and the Crazy. I am Tash Critter. I have two kids with additional needs, so we have a very neurodiverse household. Between us, we cover autism, ADHD, and PDA. Who knows what else, but they're the diagnosed ones. I have a background in teaching, so I've got a Bachelor of Education, Kindy Tier 7. While I was studying at uni, I worked with over 20 families with kids with additional needs, most of them on the spectrum, but then we had other diagnoses as well. So I was actually going into the homes and seeing what this looked like behind the scenes. Sure enough, then I had my own kids with additional needs. I own and manage Little Wooden Toybox, so I design all of the resources. I've been doing that for almost 10 years now. So we use these at home and they have been tried and tested by hundreds of other families as well. I also work as a volunteer on the Heroes program. So this is a one-to-one care, so a fun event day for kids in the community with additional needs. With my own kids, I've spent over 10 years, almost 700 hours in early intervention with speeches, OTs, psychs, physios, the works. And this has given me a unique insight into understanding behaviours of concern, why they occur, what we can do to manage that, tools and strategies that we can use at home, in the classroom, in the therapy room, to help work with these kids and understand these kids. My goal is to design and implement resources and coping strategies to make home life calmer and more organised, while also helping to educate and encourage parents that are on the same journey as I am, that may be starting this journey as well, whereas I'm 10 years along. Join me as I talk through day-to-day life with autism, the sucky bits and the wins, and tips for enjoying life despite the challenges. Hello and welcome to episode 21. This one is titled All Behaviour is Communication. I can't believe I hadn't thought to do this one already. So I have gone through a whole list of different behaviours that we typically see with kids with autism, and to see these as behaviours that are communicating a need rather than the kid being out of control or naughty or just running away or whatever the typical responses would be to these behaviours, particularly in the classroom and in therapy as well. And asking yourselves, what if we chose to step back and see the situation and look at it differently and see what we as the adult, the parent, the teacher, the therapist could do differently to get a different response from these kids, to meet their needs, to look out for the triggers that are setting off these behaviours that challenge, because these behaviours challenge us, and how we could do things differently. Now, again, same as in the last episode when I talked about co-regulation, you could have all the knowledge in the world, you can understand your sensory profile, your kid's sensory profile, you could understand their triggers and whatnot, and you're still going to get it wrong at times, But if we can, to the best of our ability, and again, we're not going to always get it right, but look at these behaviours, take a step back and think through why are these behaviours happening, then we're in a place to be able to understand, to have empathy, and to make changes to help these kids, And a lot of these behaviours that you see are kids being overwhelmed and they're self-regulating to the best of their ability. There are other behaviours that are not socially acceptable that we do want to redirect and distract where possible. And I guess knowing the difference, So if you've got a kid that's standing there flapping, and you don't understand that behaviour, like why is the kid flapping? Keep your hands by your sides or keep your hands in your lap in the classroom. But you've not understood that flapping is a sign of either excitement or anxiety. And when we look at those emotions, they're very closely related. So that kid may be containing themselves as best as they can by flapping, so they are regulating their emotions to perhaps prevent a meltdown, or that's just how they show excitement, And once we understand that, we're like, oh, okay, I see what's happening there. Do I need to do something to help this kid regulate and bring them back down to a state of calm? Or can I enjoy this excitement with them for a little bit and then we calm down and move on, or however that looks, whatever the reason is for that. I cover in the sensory and emotional profiles that excitement often comes with a sense of being out of control. So we often see excitement as a positive, if you want to call it that, a positive emotion. But it's very closely linked to anxiety. And particularly with one of my kids, excitement would very, very quickly lead straight into a meltdown. Yeah. And this is where I've done the podcast on the birthday parties and surprises and Christmas. They are, harder to manage in our house, or at least were in the earlier years, because I just didn't understand how something as exciting as opening presents on your birthday or Christmas could lead to a meltdown. But when you take a step back and you look at the behavior, this was unexpected. So he was expecting a particular present, but it was very unexpected the time it took to get it out of the case and out of the wrapping and out of everything else. And in that time, that was plenty of time to get so worked up that a meltdown happened. Yeah, I've gone a little bit off track there, but I'll run through my examples. Lining up is a big one with kids with autism, and everything in our house was lined up, whether it was papers or rocks or cars or bugs, or the bugs didn't stay still long enough often. But when we look at that behavior, that's the kid having some sense of control and order in a world that is so chaotic. Yeah. And kids with autism often have very rigid, literal thinking patterns, and this can be a real strength as far as working in industries such as IT, where that type of thinking is needed and required, and they actually excel in those types of jobs. So not every behavior is a sign of something negative as well. Does that make sense? And when we see it this way as a form of a communication, not that lining up is it can be. Lining up can be seen as a form of communication because it is a behavior, and it can be when they're feeling anxious and overwhelmed as well. And lining things up is something that they can control. They can put it in order, they can put it in a line, they can make it neat and tidy, and then that reduces anxiety. I read up on this one a little bit just before doing this podcast, and that repetitive behavior. So they used an example of, imagine if you're going on a holiday. Yeah. So you're making sure that you've got your passports in order, and you've got your toiletries in order, and you've remembered your bathers, and you've remembered your shoes, and you've packed your clothes, and you can imagine having that lined up on the bed ready to go and just running through it to make sure you've got everything. And that sense of calm of, okay, I haven't forgotten anything. Deep breath, we're good. 5 minutes later, oh, did I remember this? Going back and checking. Can you relate to that sort of? So it's that sort of thing of control and calm and a sense of order in a world that's chaotic. Yeah. Another one was that wanting to be alone, and often that parallel play. So we often see kids with autism not actually really interacting and engaging with kids around them. Yeah. And this can be, so we can try and encourage that, but when we stop and step back and have a look, social interaction can be so overwhelming, particularly when you think so literally, when you don't get the social expectations, the social norms, the inferences, all of those underlying things that you tend not to have to teach neurotypical kids. They tend to pick it up. These things we have to very explicitly teach our kids with autism, and playing alone is a way of enjoying whatever they're doing and reducing all that social overwhelm. Yeah. So I guess having a think about, all right, is this a teachable moment? Are we going to use this to teach and model interacting, or is this okay for my kid or this kid to play by themselves and just have some calm time? Yeah. Flapping, we have run through. That intense focus or not responding to you. This was more the case with one of my kids. And that can be another sign of overwhelm as well, in that the sensory overwhelm of the lights, the noise in the environment, the different noises, the noises you're supposed to block out versus the ones like mum's voice talking to you, and just everything would get blocked out. And with her, I would have to squeeze her shoulders or tap her to get attention because she was just so focused, so in her own world. And again, looking at that, and I guess unless I know better, I don't choose, but you could see that as a kid being rude, as a kid ignoring you, as selective listening or selective hearing, whatever we call it. Or, again, I could step back, look at the situation differently and go, oh, they are really not coping with the overwhelm at the moment. We could try headphones, yeah? Or we could try hiding in a dark place, so setting up a little tent, or something to help them self-regulate and remain calm, be in a safe place without blocking out the world around them. Now, for some kids this may work, for some kids it may not. I didn't know this back when my child would respond that way, so I didn't fix it as such. I want to say on that point as well, these kids don't need fixing. They're not broken. So again, coming from a point of view of empathy, understanding, wanting to help, wanting to bring out the best in them rather than trying to fix them. Yeah? Despite me just saying trying to fix it. Stimming is another one. I remember at our big Heroes events, not mine, I volunteer at Nations Church where we run the Heroes events. We just had another big one on the weekend, but one of the volleys came up to me and her kid was flapping or spinning or stimming somehow, and she asked, she was asking, what does this mean? What does this behavior mean? Do I need to do something? Have I done something that has upset this kid? And he was just excited and he was just self-regulating. So stimming we'll often see as flapping is a form of stimming, rocking is a form of stimming, spinning things. One of my kids loves spinning things, whether it's wheels on a car driving on the freeway, or whether it's wheels on a toy, or whether it's a fan or a ceiling fan, just anything that spins. And you would often catch him just spinning in circles looking at a fan for ages, and that for him was enjoyable. We see stimming for different reasons. We can see it as a sign of anxiety and not coping, so they're using it as a strategy to calm themselves down. It can be purely for enjoyment. We see that just as much, or as a sign of overwhelm with what's going on in the environment as well. So looking, what has gone on around them. Why do you think they may be doing that? Is it something that I would never encourage stopping it unless it's unsafe. My girl has done it to the point where she fell over, smashed her head, ended up with a cut and blood everywhere. So, not always good. Use your discretion as well. But I guess before jumping in and trying to fix things, to watch what's going on and why is this happening. What else have we got? Rocking, which I've mentioned as well, can be because they're overwhelmed. It can be because that is the sensory need at the moment, so that proprioceptive feedback. Anxiety as well, so looking at, why has it happened? Is there anything else you need to do? Is there anything else you can do to help? Or do you need to leave them be to calm down and self-regulate? I wrote down tippy toes and then I didn't put any notes next to it, so I've got nothing for you there. I forgot to look it up. That's another common one, the tippy toes, with kids with autism. I don't actually know why. I could guess proprioceptive feedback. I don't know. Anyway, I probably should have just skipped that in my notes. I'll come back to you on that one later. I just had a quick Google. I'm sitting in front of the computer anyway. So your tippy toes is often a sign of dysfunction in the vestibular system. I forgot to mention that before, as far as spinning, that's a part of that vestibular system which controls your balance. Controls may not be the right word. I'm not a scientist. Go look it up if you care more than the practical implications of this. So we often see with that rocking, swinging, spinning, that vestibular system, that balance, that whole body in space, so the proprioception comes into it as well, is kind of off kilter, yeah? And they require that bigger sensory feedback. Tippy toes is probably a little bit different, but anyway, I'm just going to move on. Hiding is another one. So again, a sign of overwhelm or emotional regulation, sensory regulation, as far as being in a dark, closed space, feeling safe and calm and happy in that environment when everything else in the world or the house or the classroom or whatever is a little bit crazy and chaotic. That brings that sense of calm, lowers the anxiety, helps them to cope. So having a hidey place, a cubby house, a tent, in your house where your kid can go to where they're feeling overwhelmed is a really great tool to have, and a way that they can regulate themselves. Yeah, so you're not always having to help them. That's what we really want to teach our kids. So not fixing them as such, but to give them tools and strategies where we can help them to return to a state of calm, but more importantly, where they can then take on responsibility for these tools and strategies to keep themselves calm and to, grow these tools and strategies as they get older to cope well as adults. Yeah, because they've got to live in the same world that we do, and like it or not, there's the same expectations. Yeah, so when they learn to self-regulate themselves, they have more control. Yeah. Covering eyes is another one. So same as covering ears when there's loud sudden noises, or when the environment's too loud, or whether there's a screechy noise or a particular noise they don't like. Same with covering their eyes, so they can have sensitivity to brightness, to flashing lights, to particular types of lights. Sun is a big one for one of my kids, and timing when we're in the car is, you can't always help it, but it's a consideration to help make life more enjoyable. And the last one I had was running. This isn't an exhaustive list by any means. It's just a typical list of behaviours you'll see with kids with autism. So running away, someone asked this question at a Heroes thing as well, where the kid in a particular setting kept running away. What do you do? Firstly, make sure the kid's safe, so chase them. But to, again, step back and look at, well, what were the triggers? What's always happening when this particular, say it, I don't know, I can't remember what it was. Say it was a particular class at school. So what things are always happening when this class is happening at school? Yeah, is it a particular teacher? Is there a particular smell? Is there a particular expectation? Do the lights change? Does the noise change? Is there extra music? Is there something that bangs? Like, looking at the environment and taking those steps back to see what is triggering this kid to have that fight or flight response. So in this case, flight, they're getting out of here. Yeah. And again, sign of anxiety, sign of overwhelm, whether it's sensory or emotional. It's too much to deal with. I'm out of here. Yeah. Which, look, it makes sense. At the end of the day, meltdowns are just a part of life when it comes to autism, whether that is the loud screaming, throwing, hitting, biting, however that looks for your kid or the kid that you work with, or whether it's those silent meltdowns. So it's just as important to acknowledge those silent meltdowns, because that kid is not coping either, even though it might be easier for you to deal with or ignore. Still acknowledging that they are not okay. But to do whatever we can to look out for the triggers, to look out for what's going on in their environment. And look, you're not always going to get it right. And it may be, 3 times of the kid running away in this particular situation before you actually understand what set them off. You may never be able to understand what has set them off in a certain situation, and that's okay too. But it's being or coming from a position of, I'm trying to understand what's going on. I'm looking for those triggers in the environment, in what's going on around you, to see if we can put some things in place or help you to regulate to prevent those meltdowns and the big behaviours that challenge. Yeah. All right. This also means, as I've covered in the last episode, looking after yourself as well, understanding your own sensory profile so that you can be well regulated and therefore be in a position to, even though there's escalating behaviours, there may be screaming, whatever going on, you're in a place to actually look at the situation differently and try and understand and have that empathy. Yeah. So when you begin to get frustrated, when you begin to join their chaos, you've stopped understanding. Yeah. And look, you're not always going to get it right. You may only get it right 10% of the time. Celebrate your wins, pick your battles. Yeah. All right, I'm going to go. I will leave it there. I hope that has helped someone, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.